Shanti everyone, I'm Sister Jenna and welcome to The Next Normal. As you all know, a few months ago we were doing spiritual vaccine hours, which was in collaboration and to keep the energy up since the lockdown or the stay-at-home orders were offered. And as we've moved along for all of these months, we kind of evolved into the next normal because we all need to know now, what do we do next? Where do we fit in? How do we show up in the world? So many of these programs are going to be really focused on finance, health, education, relationships, every particular factor that we're grappling with right now. In the United States of America, there's a lot happening. An election is lurking, and we're going to see a lot of games by many people. And I'm just asking everyone out there, don't get trapped in the motions. It's not going to be worth it. It's just not worth it. Stay focused and keep your hearts opened, and try, if you can, every hour in the hour to send your good wishes to your humanity. There are a lot of people that are in a lot of sorrow and a lot of pain. I mean, we have off days. Many of us do. But imagine when you live with an off day for 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. Carrying hate, deception, deceit, anger, rage, fear in your personality for way too long. But where do those emotions come from? This morning when Sister Lakshmi, who is my wonderful sister who came here to spend some time with me, came to discuss with me this whole thing about past lives. And we were talking about how impactful the lives of the past have had on our lives currently, or the way they impact our lives currently. So we sat in the morning and we were just looking at these factors and how some of us have some very eccentric behavior and some of us seem to be very normal. Some of us seem to have sort of a characteristics which, we might kind of look at that person and go, oh my gosh, what is happening with that person? We kind of question how they make their decisions. And I have a mother here who stays with us in the ashram where we are. And we've seen her go through so much. And we were thinking that it might have been just something from her past on many occasions that has really kind of stayed trapped in her. So today's show will be on reincarnation. It'll be a very sensitive show. It'll be very informative. It'll be very opening. It might even make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. But I do think it's really important for us to visit the idea. Have I been here before? And am I going through what I'm going through because there is a trapped emotion, an experience, a memory from a past that I have no more control over? But the vibration of that memory is still initiating the choices that I will be making, even now or into the future, unless I let go. One of the things that I've learned in my spiritual journey of the Brahma Kumaris, of their Raj Yoga teachings, is that the only way I can get rid of that memory that has imprisoned me is to have remembrance of the divine. And each time I go into this emotional, mental, spiritual, logical, heartfelt connection to the divine, it softens the memories that I'm carrying inside of the soul. So imagine an ice cube when it's all frozen, and imagine when it's melted and it turns into water. So when I have yoga with God, what happens is that the love that I'm receiving from the connection and the experience begins to melt all the harsh experiences that I put up in my consciousness as a wall so I don't feel the pain again. So I'm pretty sure you're going to really enjoy tonight's sharing on The Next Normal. Call your friends, text them right now. The movie will start shortly. But before we go to the movie, I want you to listen to this very short video by the professor of the University of Virginia. Santosh, what was his name? Jim Tucker. Jim Tucker. I think it was about, was it 2 or 3 years ago, one of our brothers had come from the UK, Dr. Prashant, and he was doing a whole bunch of research on reincarnation and rebirth. And the University of Virginia, Professor Jim Tucker, has done over 2,000 cases of past birth or past life experiences of some children who are able to come back and tell you how they died or what life they were living before this, and would basically try to tell their parents, this is not who I am. Now, there is scientific proof that there is something happening inside of the soul if for whatever reason the soul hasn't closed down that experience. But why I think this conversation and this topic is so important, as I was saying, we need to know what's sitting in the consciousness of the soul. And more than anything else is the fact that many of these 2,700 cases that Professor Tucker did, he went back to see if when these children were talking about the way they died or the life that they left behind was real, they found proof that it was true, that there was a connection. So you and I live in our lives, right? We have a name, we have a gender, we have a religion, we have a culture, and we're just carrying on. And many times we might find ourselves in a marriage, in a friendship with a mother, with a father, with a brother, with a sister, with somebody that we're like, every time I look into their eyes, there's either a feeling of joy, a feeling of great love, or a feeling of fear or repulsion. And all of that is valid. There must be a reason why you can turn to the right and 10 people love that person. But when you go in front of that person, you just want to run in the opposite direction as far away as possible. So does reincarnation exist? And I know the mother had pointed out, I might not believe in all these new agey things. May I just request you to not think of reincarnation as anything new agey? There are scientists right now that are looking into the factor of the soul. And does the soul take rebirth? Question. In 1901, there were 1.4 billion people on the planet. We are now in 2020. We're in 2020. And there are 7 billion people on the planet. Where did 6 billion souls just come from within the last 120 or 30 or 50 years or so? Not much time has passed since then. And look at how many souls have actually come onto the earth and are playing out their part. So, what must be the legacy and the history of the souls prior to 1900? What narratives are they carrying as a recording in the soul? Scientists are showing now that energy doesn't die. It does change, but it doesn't die. And even though I might sit here in front of you and say, I might not be afraid of death, I could definitely tell you, I don't want to experience suffering. And my not wanting to experience suffering is normal. You don't want to experience suffering, do you? And if you love suffering or pain, you need to start to think, what's holding my consciousness in some past life that I feel I am supposed to suffer in this life? It's different if you find yourself saying, I just need a break. When am I going to get a break in life? And even when you find yourself saying that more than 3 times, it's still connected to something of the past. When you're a fresh, new soul on this planet, you should be more in the state of everything is okay. It's just what it is. Om Shanti. Life is just what it is. There's more of a natural acceptance because there aren't a lot of memories recorded in you yet that will be pulling you back and trying to tell you, no, don't go there because don't open that door. So there are stories about people who have issues with locking doors. There are stories about people who are claustrophobic. There are stories about people who can never find keys. I remembered a friend of mine, whenever she would eat a dish, she would find a stone. It didn't matter. There are 10 of us in the room, and we're on a table, and all of us have the same serving items. And out of all of us, she'll be the only one that will bite into a pebble, a stone of some sort. She goes, I don't know what it is. Since a child, I always end up with a stone in my plate. Now, we never knew where did that stone come from and why she always ends up with a stone. Something that is so strong as an energy is in her, but because, it's nonchalant, she doesn't really look into it. She just keeps eating food and finding stones. So, why I think understanding if reincarnation exists or rebirthing exists, and it might not be what we want to hear, but I think it makes you and I more accountable to the choices that we make and the way we choose to live our lives. And sometimes we just can't control everything outside. Actually, we can never control things on the outside. What if you were to actually think your part in this world drama has been preordained, and the only mistake that you and I make is to get attached to the stories? But maybe that too is a part of the drama. And we're at this particular next normal is to begin to remove our attachments to these stories. When I went walking today outside, I was saying to myself and to God, because I call God Baba, I was saying to Baba, what is it that's still holding me back? And I began to kind of look at a file of all the things that tends to disturb me. One of the things that I still have a little bit of a discomfort about is religion. Walking into religious places, my chest gets very heavy. I start to feel an element of fear, and I know it's something from my past. And look what I end up doing and living more of day by day. I also tend to find I get extremely out of sorts when somebody within my vortex, within my team dynamics, begins to throw away the importance of their role to create the bigger vision. A lot of people are more accommodating, but for me, I start to lose it. And I know it has something to do with me, something in the past. And what has come up for me is that I could feel sometimes I was in some sort of a military environment, and somebody in the team had an ego or a lack of vision, and it just messed up the whole team because they just weren't aware that what choices they made impacted everyone else. And so I've been still trying to sort that out. And still to this day, so many of the jackets that I wear are sort of military. I mean, go figure that, right, Santosh? I mean, this is weird. And so where does that energy come from? And it's so natural. I will put on my little military jackets and I feel so comfortable over my sari. That's not normal, but it could be the next normal. But I do it. And every time I do it, I know it feels interesting. And there are two feelings. Like whenever I put on my sari every day, which is a 7-yard long piece of material, every day I wear the same sari, not the same one, they're washed. And so I put another one on the next day. And I put that on, I feel like I'm God's bride. And then I'll put on this military jacket and then I feel like I'm on duty to save the world. And these two energies are living in me. In duty to save the world, that I'm God's bride, surrendered to the journey. Now I need to balance and iron all of that out. And that's why I'm on my path of meditation and yoga, because it's really, really important for me to iron out what is happening in my consciousness, that it's obstructing abundance. It's obstructing love. It's obstructing health. It's obstructing great relationships. Because something is inside with us of that fear. It holds you back. It holds you back. So when we get to learn more about the whole power of reincarnation, I really believe it'll help you and me to make right choices. And while we were having lunch, we were saying that why I think a lot of people don't want to forget religious tendencies and what religions say. I mean, I'm not quite sure. If you really study scriptures and text, I see the theme of reincarnation in everyone, in every one of those texts. I can see that thread flowing through, but it depends on the way you see Atma or you see soul. But while at lunch today, we were talking about why we feel some people don't accept reincarnation. Is that if you accept reincarnation and you end up making a decision that gave sorrow or suffering to a lot of people, what's your conscience going to feel? And then you will have to live with that. And the question is, you don't want to accept that you made a mistake. So the tendency for us as human beings is not to accept that we made a mistake, but to pretend we didn't and just brush over it. So that moves on in next life, in next life, in next life. It carries the energy and the vibrations. Whatever's the frequency in the soul, I attract that in my atmosphere, in my vortex, in everything that I do. But if I understand the power of reincarnation and the importance of it in my life, then when I do make a decision or a part in me emerges and it didn't give happiness to other people, but then I accept and I become accountable that what I did was wrong, it releases a lot of that vibration in the soul. So the more and the easier, the quicker I can accept reincarnation as a tool to liberate me from some of these choices that I'm making, so that I don't keep making mistakes that give sorrow to people, then can you imagine what kind of a consciousness I could actually walk around the world with, whether it's in this lifetime or in the future ones to come. So we've got this video. It's about 40 minutes. We're going to run over in the show today. But again, I want you to really settle down for the show today. And if, hopefully we won't get tagged for it. If we are, go onto Facebook, Meditation Museum, or go onto Vimeo, Vimeo, Meditation Museum. It should be written in the comment. And if you're on Twitter, I think it should be the same. You can watch it also on Twitter from Medit Museum. And put down the pen and paper, because what's going to happen tonight is if you have a phobia, if you have a fear of any kind, or there's just certain things that you just wonder, why did I marry this person? Well, you know, I don't deserve this. Everything that's happening around us is happening for us to be liberated. And the quicker we can let go of the attachment to that story, the better off we'll be. Enjoy this movie, and I'll see you back in about 40 minutes.
He was 2 years old. He saw a lady on TV and he said, I was one of those when I was a girl. So I said, all right. When were you a girl? He said, before I came to you. This came out over a period of time. Before he came to us, he had been a girl. And he got married, and he married a man called George, and they'd had a baby. And George didn't like the baby. So she had taken herself and the child to a bridge and jumped off it and killed herself and the child.
My son was 2 years old, and he suddenly said, Mummy, when I was an old man, I was very, very sad. And I asked him why. He said it was because his house had burnt down, and his two daughters had been standing at the bedroom window in their smocks, and they were burnt to death.
Around the world, thousands of children from different backgrounds and religions have described a life they have lived before. The belief in the survival of the soul is an ancient one, but the fact that these children talk about events which seem beyond their childhood experience is considered by some to be evidence of reincarnation.
division within the Department of Psychiatric Medicine at the University of Virginia.
At the Division of Personality Studies in Charlottesville, Virginia, there are 2,700 documented cases of children who talk about a previous life. These children come from around the world: Southern Asia, West Africa, Europe, and the United States. Scientists at this Center of International Research are hoping to find proof of reincarnation, so they carefully investigate new cases as they emerge.
My son Harley was 3 years and 3 months old when I first heard him speak of something which indicates a prior life experience. It was on Halloween, 1997. I don't have a problem believing in reincarnation, though until Harley started telling me things about his other mama, I never really thought about it in any concrete way. I would like to ask him more about it, but I don't want to do so in a way that will suggest answers to him. Any suggestions? Sincerely, Pamela Pesco-Solito.
I'm in a town called Exeter, California, which has about 10,000 people, and I'm going to visit a mother and a little boy who has said some things about having lived before. We've got over 100 American cases in the files, and they tend to break down into two camps. They're the same family cases where the child remembers a deceased relative, and then there are the unsolved stranger cases like this one where the child has made statements about a stranger that so far we've not been able to identify. The best case scenario is that I meet with them, they're very straightforward and seem like honest, reasonable people. He's made a fair number of rather specific statements, so if I'm able to verify it, it'll be a very strong case. The worst case scenario, I suppose the worst, would be where I begin to suspect it's fraud. As far as we know, we only have the mother as a witness. So even if we assess her and don't think that fraud would be involved, it does increase the chance that she has simply misinterpreted some statements that the boy has made. Pam? Hi. I'm Jim Tucker.
Nice to meet you.
Good to meet you. And this must be Harley. Hi, Harley. This is Jim Tucker. This is an interview with Pam Pesco-Solito on May 28, 2000, and her son Harley, who is the subject. All right, so when was the first time that Harley said anything that might be related to this?
When he was around two, when he got in trouble or sent to his room or something, he would sit in his room howling over and over again, "I want my mama," even though when I walked in the room and stood in front of him saying, "Here I am," he would still keep saying, "I want my mama." Then when he was 3, on Halloween, we went trick-or-treating at one of the neighborhoods over there on the other side of town. We pretty much exhausted the possibilities of that particular neighborhood, and I said, okay, well, let's get in the truck and drive over to the other side of town. And he said, "Oh, you mean the part of town where we used to live?" And I said, "Well, we never lived in town." And he said, "Oh, when I lived with my other mama." And I was like, "Oh, your other mama." And and who was that? And I don't know if it was then or later that he said her name was Stacy. Yeah, you remember that? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The day when
Maybe.
you mentioned the road being paved, had you guys done anything special, or you just...
I was just like on our way
driving
home from
around?
work.
There are other statements that added to Pam's concern. Harley had pointed to a road they passed every day and said, "Oh, they've paved it now," yet the road was paved 30 years before. He talked about an older brother pushing him out of a tree and going on a camping trip to the mountains with his other mother, Stacy. Harley's story fits the pattern of many of these cases. He said these things repeatedly when he first learned to speak and stopped when he began school at the age of 5. Harley also had a birthmark, which in such cases is thought to be a physical reminder of injuries received in the previous life. He could also remember his own death.
And he'd also mentioned when he died?
I think he said 15 or 17, or I honestly don't remember right now. But it was a teenage age.
Mm-hmm. And I think in the letter you mentioned he said he had died in a car accident, didn't he?
Right, in a car accident. I asked him how he died, and he said in a car accident. I mean, I believed him. I believed that he was saying something that was true to him.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I believe that you believe it, you know?
Mm-hmm. It did not seem that he was kidding at
He
the
didn't
time.
seem like he was kidding. Because he would say it all with just very matter-of-factly.
Mm-hmm.
Usually when he's making up stories, he puts on this silly little voice. I'm like, damn, I know. But
And he
wasn't doing that at all, no. Don't break your neck, please. Whoa!
It's possible that he was doing some make-believe and that she took it a little too seriously. Certainly a lot of kids have imaginary friends that is sort of make-believe, but where they're not quite sure that it's make-believe.
Here, go on my shoulders. You can pretend you're doing the motion.
I didn't get the sense that Pam was particularly wrapped up in the idea of having a child who was a rebirth case. I mean, even though she agreed to a television interview, she is keeping it pretty hush-hush. I mean, she hadn't even told her mother. So I don't think she's seeking publicity or anything like that.
It's a very Christian, right-wing sort of town, and I just don't know that these new agey sorts of ideas, if you want to call them that are something that would go over big with the local community. But I don't know, maybe they would be. Jesus got born again, so who's to say?
Authentication of Harley's story is essential if this case is to be anything other than a curiosity. The key is to find whether Harley's previous personality ever existed.
I started at the date of Harley's birth. I'm just working my way back, looking through the obituaries and any stories of car accidents. Like here's an accident where 6 people were injured, but it looks like 9 were killed. If we find that a 15-year-old named Jonathan was killed in a car accident and he had a mother named Stacy, then we know we had our man. Well, I went through the newspaper archives, but only got through 94 and 93. I found one Jonathan that was 19 when he was killed in a car accident. Of course, Harley had said that he was 15. But also the mother's name didn't match. I think this one was named Sylvia, where the one thing that Harley seemed certain about was that his mother had been named Stacy. Where are you gonna get? Well, no, I need a picture of you just standing there.
Finding a previous personality match isn't scientific proof of reincarnation. But these cases constantly throw up questions which investigators are compelled to address.
Good, thank you very much. Good job.
Congratulations.
In my experience as a child psychiatrist, it seems clear that 3- and 4-year-olds do not have any meaningful understanding of death. He may say it, but not really know what he means by it. Many of these children speak of having a violent death. That implies that a sudden death or a violent death contributes to the children being able to remember. It doesn't necessarily mean that it contributes to them reincarnating, although that would be a possibility.
After the accident, I was watching what was being done to me. My younger sister cried a lot. There was a garland on my body when I was brought home. I've seen a photograph of my corpse, and the garland is there in the photograph. I can't remember much after that. I was in darkness and saw some light. I remember coming in the direction of the light, and then I was reborn.
In the East, there is a long-established tradition of children with past life memories. In Buddhism, the main religion in Sri Lanka, there is a firm belief that the dead will be reborn back into the physical world on the path towards spiritual enlightenment, or nirvana. This is a culture where reincarnation isn't a hope, but an expectation. Dr. Erlander Haraldsson has investigated over 60 cases in Sri Lanka. He has found that compared to the West, children here recall specific details, which makes it easier to discover the identity of the person the child claims to have been before. Dr. Haraldsson considers the case of Purnima to be one of his strongest.
I came to know the case of Purnima in 1996. And I published it, wasn't it, in January 2000. So we studied it for some, well, we can say like for 3 years.
Dr. Haraldsson and his interpreter have visited Purnima's family many times to investigate her story. They live in a small town called Bakamuna in the central province. Her father is the head teacher of a local school. All her family are practicing Buddhists.
When Purnima was about school age, she asked me if I wanted to know where her mother and father were from. I thought she meant me and my husband, so I ignored her. Then she said her other parents were living in Kalania, about 140 miles away from here. She went on talking about her previous life. She talked about a fragrance, a sweet smell. Anything she made at home, food or clothes, she said, I want to take it to my mother.
Purnima was 3 years old when she started talking about her past life, but what's unusual is that now, age 12, she still has the same memories.
I was a man before. My real name is Jenna. I was called Jinnasena, but they call me Jenna. I had a sister and younger brothers. What I did in those days was to manufacture incense sticks and then distribute them to shops. We had vehicles, but mostly I went on push bike. I spent a lot of time travelling from place to place.
As a small child, Purnima could describe not just the way she used to make incense, but the names of the brands she sold. Ambika and Getapicha. Her parents were baffled. In Kelania and Goda, 140 miles away, live the Vijayasiri family, who are incense makers. They are the only family in the country registered to make Ambika and Getapicha incense, the brands Purnima talked about. One member of this family, Jinadasa, was killed in an accident 4 years before Purnima was born. When Purnima first described her past life memories, these families, separated by distance and class, had never met.
Jenna was my brother. He manufactured incense sticks for a living. We worked together before he had his accident.
That day, Jenna and I, we started together from Galvani Junction and separated at Wellimpicha. We were on push bikes with our incense packed in boxes. Jenna said he was going to Dalkanda, so I sold my incense nearby. Then someone asked me, "Where is Jenna?"
I got down to Dalkanda Junction and I had to cross the road. I got off my bike and tried to cross to the other side and I saw a bus coming. I didn't like the way it was heading towards me, but then the bus came right by and it knocked me down. When I opened my eyes, I was under the bus.
At about 2 in the afternoon, the police came and showed me a packet of incense and said that the person who was selling this had been run over by a bus. It was the Nukugoda police, and they had a packet of Ambika incense, and then I realized what it meant.
When she was very young, Purnima's memories were overwhelming. She had difficulty in separating her past life from her present one. Then when she was 5, a new teacher came to work at her father's school. He lived in the area where she claimed to have lived before.
Purnima's father is my head teacher. I work in his school in the week and go home to Kelaniya at weekends. I told him that I could make investigations. He didn't tell me to do it. I went home and mentioned this, and my brother-in-law said that he didn't believe in rebirth. He suggested we investigate the matter together to see if there was any truth to the story. We made inquiries here first because Purnima had remembered praying at this famous temple in Kelaniya before. We asked if there was anyone near here who made incense sticks. I was told there was a village across the water over there, where there were several families who made them. We managed to find the place, and eventually discovered that someone who made incense sticks had died in a road accident.
When the teacher Sumana Siri reported back with positive information, we spoke to Purnima about it and decided to go there. I realized it was true because Purnima had directed the driver straight to the house. After we got out, she led us there. I couldn't believe how strong her memories were. She talked about how we'd pass a pond and described the house exactly as being on a higher level than the road.
Purnima was only 5 years old when she first met the family. She has kept in written contact over the years. All the family, including Jinadasa's wife and daughter, are convinced that this 12-year-old girl is his reincarnation. They said they were sure from the moment they first met.
One day I was coming back across the paddy fields, and a young girl was pointing at me and saying that I was her brother-in-law. I heard her saying it. She asked for her sister, my wife, who wasn't here. Then she asked, "Where is she?" She went right around the house looking for incense sticks that we used to sell. She asked for a particular packet of incense. The packet wasn't here when she came, but we made it at the time when Jenna Dasa was alive. She asked, why have we changed the colours? She was looking for the vans. She was asking lots of questions. On the day of the trial over Jenna Dasa's death, we had to go to the police station first. Purnima was there too. She went up to Jenna Dasa's sister and sat on her lap and kissed her and called her my younger sister. The police were very confused, and the magistrate said it was very unusual.
She kissed me. She knew who I was. I was amazed.
When a 5-year-old is calling a grown woman her younger sister, it's a surprising thing.
I think the fact that the Buddhists, that's the majority of the population, they believe in reincarnation, that certainly has an effect on the cases. I think here in Sri Lanka, when a child starts to speak about a previous life, I think then people here will listen more carefully than they would listen in Europe or in North America. In spite of that, there is an important additional factor in this case, and that is, after this family was identified and some of the statements found to fit, then additionally to that, it turned out that Purnima had very marked birthmarks on the left side of her chest, and these birthmarks correspond to the fatal injuries of Jenna Dasa. We were able to trace the post-mortem report regarding the death of Jenna Dasa. He was run over by a bus, and his ribs on the left side were broken. They penetrated his lungs, and probably the greatest pain he felt was on the left side. But of course, birthmarks start to form in the embryo. They are not a matter of any cultural influence.
When I was little, I'd never heard of rebirth or reincarnation. I was going on my own memory. When I went to see the family, I came to realise that rebirth was something real, something factual. I learned about it through my experience alone.
Do you think these cases are suggestive of reincarnation?
Well, someone said, in the night I believe in ghosts, but never during the day. So,
I have no idea whether there's life after death. I have no idea whether God exists. I study the psychology of deception. I've looked at the psychology behind essentially things like magic tricks, for example, how it is that we manage to fool ourselves when we're watching a magician. When we go along to a magic show, we want to be fooled. We make certain assumptions, we allow ourselves to be fooled. When people investigate reincarnation, lots of investigators want the claims to be true. They're not impartial at all. They want to believe that people have lived before, and so they're prepared to make assumptions, prepared to look at the evidence in a certain way, and essentially, in my opinion, trip themselves up. We conducted an experiment which assessed the role of chance for evidence of reincarnation. And essentially we wanted to come up with a situation which was very similar to what's happening in actual cases of alleged reincarnation. There you have children saying they have lived before. The families go away, they look at often several families who have unfortunately lost a child, and they find matches with one particular family. What happened? In our experiment, we went to 4 children and simply asked them to make up an imaginary person.
What would the baby's name be? Katie. Katie. What would he do?
He liked to go to his bedroom.
He'd like to go to his bedroom, yep. Is it a little boy or a little girl?
Little girl. She likes to clean up the house.
Just to clean up the house.
Once we had the stories, we then needed to match them, or try and match them, against various actual deaths of children. Now, the way in which we did that was to look through the databases from national newspapers for child deaths of various types. What we found was for one particular story, there were in fact an incredible number of matches.
Monsters got Katie. Monsters bit her.
They bit her. So what happened to Katie?
Died.
She died.
It was Molly that gave us the most interesting case. When we asked her to make up an imaginary person, she came up with a child called Katie. She said she was an only child, that she had red hair, blue eyes, that she was dressed in pink clothing that had a pattern on it, particularly had flowers on it.
Do you think she had lots of adventures?
Go to the beach.
Go to the beach.
That she was aged 3, she enjoyed going to the beach, but that she'd run away, in fact run away from Mummy, that the monsters had come. I asked her what the monsters looked like, and they said that she said that they looked like me, that actually the monsters had bit her and actually killed her. Now, we came across an instance where, unfortunately, a child had been abducted and killed, and there were very, very strong similarities between the two cases. For example, the child who had been abducted was an only child. She had got red hair, she had got blue eyes. That's exactly as Molly had described her. On the day that she was abducted, she was dressed in pink. She had got patterned clothing on, and particularly she's wearing a t-shirt with a flower on it. She was aged 3. She lived very close to the beach. She did run away on her own, and that's when her captor came along, took her away, and unfortunately killed her. And, you know, he does look rather a lot like me. Let's imagine that Molly had turned round and said, no, I've lived before, and that Katie was my previous life. We would be looking at probably the best reincarnation case of the century. This essentially is strong evidence. Unfortunately, it's evidence against reincarnation. People should realise that chance does actually explain quite a lot of what's going on in the quotes genuine reincarnation cases.
Scientific evidence of reincarnation is obviously hard to prove. Coincidence and religious belief may account for children like Purnima, but can it really explain the increasing number of children with past life memories now coming forward in the West? But for those around them, it offers reassurance. Perhaps in the West, the belief in reincarnation is a powerful way of coming to terms with things we cannot control.
Death is real. You can't euphemize it, you can't talk about it as falling asleep or passing away or whatever. A person who is dead is actually dead. We're not, on the whole, used to death. It's done in places like hospitals or hospices. Death and endings is something that none of us can ever make sense of completely. Reincarnation, at one level, holds the living and the dead together. It says there is a link between the living and the dead. We've given up the formal Christian belief system, which historically was used to make some sort of sense of death. But it is a question of how we develop, if you like, a language and a set of symbols that help us cope with mysteries and realities like death.
That's the one problem with the drugs, is they leave me very tired.
25% of people in Britain, nominally a Christian country, now believe in reincarnation, although mainstream religions reject it.
Good.
Religious beliefs are becoming a matter of personal choice, so we pick and choose ideas which bring us comfort.
You're smiling.
There's solace in the belief that a life will be constantly recycled. There's a case in Britain of a woman who's had past life memories since childhood and has been accepted by a family as the reincarnation of their late mother. In this, they find great comfort.
Well, with being Roman Catholics, we do not believe in reincarnation. That's what we were taught. And when Jenny said that she was the reincarnation of my mother, well, I felt a bit dubious about it. But it's very hard to explain. To me, there's no way that Jenny could make that up, because she told me something that nobody else remembers, only me.
Sonny Sutton grew up in a town called Malahide in Southern Ireland. He's the eldest of 8 children. His mother died when he was 13 years old, but a few years ago a woman called Jenny Cockell contacted him, claiming to be his mother, Mary.
Mary was, to me, who I was, who I had been. I had very personal memories of bringing up those children. When I was a small child, she was still a part of me.
Jenny began to tell me about the nightmares and why she often woke up crying, and that was because she had nightmares about being an adult, dying. I just felt awful. This was beyond my experience. This was my daughter. I could do nothing to help her, nothing to ease her pain, nothing to make her feel better, except be there when she wanted to talk and just wait to see what developed.
Jenny dreamt that she died in a hospital room, leaving her 8 children alone and vulnerable. Sonny's mother, Mary, had died in a hospital in Dublin, and after her death, his 7 brothers and sisters were split up and sent away to orphanages. He didn't see them again for many years.
I grew up with this sense of having deserted my children. I'd let them down. That I knew that if I possibly could find them, I would.
Ever since Jenny first talked about her memories of Mary when she was 4 years old, she held on to them all through her childhood into her adulthood, until she was able to investigate them herself. She visited the town of Malahide, which she could draw from memory when she was a child, and found the ruins of the cottage where she lived as Mary. She relied on local records of the area to track down the surname of the family, and then traced each of the children, one by one.
I was standing at the window this day, and this car pulled up outside, and this person got out. And I said to Ivy, there's a person getting out of the car, son. She looks very much like my mother. Hello, sweetheart. How are you? Nice seeing you. Jenny has that soft, gentle voice, the same as my mother had. I don't like her jacket.
Don't you?
No, because it's the same as mine.
Is it?
She started telling me her dreams, her memories. And I said to myself, my God, how can she know all this?
I could remember standing on a jetty, and it was dusk, and I was waiting for a boat. And sometimes I'd have that as a memory, and sometimes it would come back as a dream. But it was one of those ones, it left me with a question. Who was I waiting for? Who was on the boat?
My mother used to come down to meet me. And she'd sit on the stone steps opposite the jetty waiting for the boat to come in. You understand? To meet me.
Is your mummy?
Within half an hour or so, we were exchanging our halves of memories. I would give him half of an incident, and he'd finish it off.
I was so happy for her. that after all these years of agonizing about everything and being so concerned about the children and unable to do anything or find out anything, to finally find that they were all right, they'd all had good lives, that what had happened to them, being sent to orphanage, hasn't destroyed them as people. I was just so happy for her.
The way I looked at it was when my mum died, I said to myself, that's my life is gone. Without her, what am I going to do? I loved my mother and I lost my mother. And Jenny's come into my life now. She's a great substitute for my mother.
My eldest son was killed in 1986 and his daughter was killed last year. But it does make it a little bit easier, being convinced that there's continuation. I'm sorry about this. Not easier enough, obviously. Christians say the soul doesn't die, and it obviously doesn't. It goes from person to person, which is something I couldn't have believed myself thinking at one time, but has now become blazingly obvious.
Most religious or spiritual beliefs bring comfort and meaning to our lives. Just because people want to believe in reincarnation doesn't mean it isn't true. There are thousands of children who persistently describe memories of events that seem beyond their understanding and experience. While scientists and investigators have observed this phenomenon, they have yet to explain why these children talk about their past lives. They remain an enigma.
She suddenly turned round and said, when I was a baby, my mummy fell down the stairs with me and I went into the fire and I died, but then I came alive again in my mummy. I've never known another child to say things like that, and I've been teaching for 12 years now.
When she started, she witches on and you just sort of tend to ignore it, but the more that it goes on, I mean, even her brothers sort of said to her, you know, give it a rest, Ella. Keeping on about your brothers and your mum and your other, she's always got this other mummy and daddy. I mean, she has obviously got a vivid imagination and she's full of it, but I do think there is something there. I don't quite know why or how. I do think there's something there.
Is our topic of reincarnation is opening up the subtle energies. Anyway, I want everyone to take a breath. I know for some of you it might be overwhelming, and in other ways it might be liberating, and on other levels it might be inspiring. And the reason why I think we chose this topic today was not just because Lakshmi had brought it to my attention this morning, but with all the hate that's going on in the world right now, I want you to imagine the idea that why racism, revenge, hate, it's so unnecessary, is that you have no idea if you had a similar life like that, or that maybe you've been through something similar. Just imagine there were stories, and these might have even shown that the people are in their same situation, the same circumstance. But I've actually even studied even more that there was one guy who was in Slovenia in 1876. When they did the research, it was a family in the royal kingdom that was killed. The whole family was taken by somebody who felt that they were wronged and that they deserved to be in the kingdom. And the guy, many lives later, is an Indian man living in India with no connection to Europe. Now, what if he is born as that guy hating white people? Can you imagine? What is the energy that he'd be carrying? It's like he's hating himself, because there was a time that he was that. So I'm just curious, you know, to go into this conversation with you, because a lot of the hate and the anger and the pain and the fear, is it signaling to you that there's something you, the soul, is still attached to, that you're holding on to, that is creating an issue? And is it that you need more love to soften the energy of that attachment so that you can be released? What if it really is love as the cure to help us navigate through all these memories that we're carrying inside? And why I will say to you that this isn't eerie or scary, nobody should feel afraid, because when you plant a seed in the earth, comes a tree, the tree grows to the heights, then it plants a new sapling and something gets re-renewed. As living souls, as energy, we really do travel and we carry on until, I believe, until it's like we've done our rounds. In a way, you know, we've done our rounds and all right, now I kind of really just want to break. And I just want to take it easy. And so I feel like this particular space that we're in, with this time that we're going through, it's time for us to sort out a lot of the stuff that is still inside. And for me, what I'm checking is all the energy of algae, anger, lust, greed, attachment, and ego. They're connected to something of my past. And the more I feed them, the stronger they get. In this lifetime, and maybe if I keep feeding it, it gets stronger in the next. But I think what also this idea, if we've been here before, and it's a choice that you can make, that if I've been here before, and I am traveling on my journey, that I want to be protected by my karmas and the choices that I make. That I want to be a loving and a generous and a kind and a sweet and an intelligent and a brave and a strong and an understanding human being. Because imagine recording that energy in my personality, that if I do come back, then wouldn't that energy be like a protection, as a vibration recorded in me wherever I go? Wouldn't that manifest to me back that energy for me to attract that vibration around me? So with all the things that are going on in our lives today, whether you're in the United States of America, which is going through some settling of some dark times, whether we're in Europe, there are also challenges happening there, whether you're in Asia, anywhere out there. This particular normalcy that we need to move into, I believe the next normal is to begin to look inside and really begin to work on the energy that is sitting there stuck and stagnant. Was it Einstein who was saying we only use 3 to 5% of our brain capacity? So let's say we use 5%. What's the 95% of my energy doing? Is that from my past? And is that not allowing me to live? I think about this over and over again, everyone. Like, how much more and what more can the energy of God work through me to work, to be of service, to be a good human being, to thrive, to be a presence that would comfort hearts instead of hurt hearts? And whenever you're in this space and you don't feel happy, you don't feel connected, you don't feel evolved, you don't feel secure, there's a memory there. There's something there. And I would need so much energy and so much of this experience of love from the divine to just melt this memory so I can be released from that story. So I leave it up to all of you for your next normal to contemplate. Take some time and think about some of these ideas. How will it help me to be more free? Because the next normal would be more inner freedom, not more inner bondage. Sometimes what is it that makes one person can do 5 things and they think it's a big deal, and one person can do 50 things and stay quiet about it and nobody knows how big of a deal it is? Today we talked about Lady Diana and Mother Teresa, and how both of them left their body at the same time. A day or two, Mother Teresa passed away. And the whole world mourned Lady Diana. The whole world was crying. And when Mother Teresa left, you didn't hear all that mourning. And yet look at how much Mother Teresa did. But the whole world wasn't mourning her departure from her role. But in Lady Diana, and I'm not saying she didn't do as much as Mother Teresa, but I don't think she was at that grassroots ground level that touched so many in that way. And yet, the whole world mourned her departure as she moved on to another experience. Where are we going? Who are the people that you're looking at through your eyes, through your drishti? When you see them, try to recognize, are you willing to repair this relationship with this person? And not have any more account of debt or owing to this soul. And the only way I can pay my debt off with souls is to become an embodiment of love, where God's energy and the divine's energy is just flowing through. And I'm just not trying to take too much of how different they are on board. Because a lot of reasons why we expect so much from each other, sometimes I think it's some past memory, like I'm going back to you to pay back what I think you owe me. And in reality, can we? At a feeling level, can we really give the other person the feeling that soul needs to be free from its past? It's only the energy from the above. So I leave that for you to percolate on and churn. And I want everyone to not think about this as anything weird or out there. It's as normal as the seasons that are changing. But I believe the fact that we are become so attached to our stories, it's been very, very difficult for us to be sort of aware, you know, of how to navigate through such a shift and such a change. Power of reincarnation. Have you and I been here before? It's a good possibility. Thanks to everyone for joining us tonight, and do some journaling, write your stories down, expand your horizon, expand your capacity to see things from a broader perspective, and just try not to be so small in your thinking that you damage things. And maybe that's all a part of the journey, or else it wouldn't happen. You know, Lakshmi was asking me, why is it that some people remember their past? I think it's obvious that the attachment to that past life was so deep and so intense, it's just harder to let go of the story. Now, I get glimpses, but I don't detail everything I've been through. But I have felt them. I've had experiences of seeing my future lives even. I'm not focusing on it fully. I don't spend too much time, but I am very present in checking, what am I feeding, my past or my future? So I check that a lot. Where am I emotionally and mentally at the time that I'm eating? When I'm speaking to someone, when I'm looking at someone, and on so many occasions I move so far away. from being able to catch up to what my future will be. Even though I know it's all preordained, I still have to be responsible for the choices I make right now. But we do forget. And when we forget, the energy of whatever choice we made sits there until love comes in. Until love comes in to the soul to melt away the trauma, the grief, the loss, the disappointment, the hurt that the soul carries. So take some time to look into this, and I will do a part 2 because I think this one was hodgepodge and because of the technical issues. But take some time and think about your life. And think about what areas you really are ready to release and say to the universe, no more. I've traveled with this vibration in me for too long. Then you go into meditation and you connect to the divine and you say, just release me from this. I just want to be an embodiment of love. That's all I want to be, is a loving, strong human being who can help people rather than hurt people. So give it some thought tonight, and feel free to share your thoughts and ideas. And thank you, Jack, and thank you, Jack Potato, for mentioning this. The thing is, I'm very much about unity and equality regardless, and it feels important either way. It was fascinating. Thank you, Jack. I'm glad that you appreciated that. Betty Brown, Tonya. I know, Tonya, things that make you go, right? It's true. Nimi, I'm glad that you love the topic. Great. Thank you for joining in on this. It's important. And we have to face our fears. If you're in the United States of America, I think that's eerie, what's going on in America. I think that's scary because it's happening right now, and you can only see the energies building towards a catastrophic particular way in which people will start to treat each other. And because they don't believe that they come back, the choices they make might be out of ignorance, not knowing that if they've given sorrow to anyone, that sorrow sits as a recording in the soul and travels with them. That's why I feel like we will never get away with anything, because we will meet each other. We will bump into each other in some way, form, or shape. But deepen your relationship with the divine and talk to God with love. And let that love in, that it can melt your past. Thanks for joining us for our next normal. And I'll see you tomorrow. I think we're going to have Louis Gossett on tomorrow. We're finalizing tonight. So he's coming out with a new movie called Foster. And we'll also talk about the current situation that's happening in America with the shooting that took place in Wisconsin. Have a good night. Take care.
I will be gentle with myself. I will be gentle with myself. And I will hold myself like a newborn baby child. I will be gentle with myself. I will be gentle with myself. And I will hold myself like a newborn baby child. I will be tender with my heart. I will be tender with my heart. And I will hold my heart like a newborn baby child. I will be tender with my heart. I will be tender with my heart. And I will hold my heart like a newborn baby child. And I will only go as fast as the slow